Why a strong brand matters when everyone is fighting for attention. Hey y'all, this is Chris McAdoo. As always, honored to be with you with the Big Ideas Welcome podcast, brought to you by the Knoxville Entrepreneur Center, a nonprofit business accelerator located right in the heart of downtown Knoxville, Tennessee, otherwise known as the Maker City. In a world that is noisy and overflowing with competition, like, how do you stand out? And that's why we're talking about brand today. Your brand can be your biggest advantage or your biggest liability. And we're going to do this with folks in industries that you might not have considered, right? Traffic technology and self-storage. Bill Malkes and Tommy Nguyen. Bill Malkes is a serial entrepreneur, co-founded a company called GRIDSMART that revolutionized traffic management, right? They expanded it across the globe. And part of the reason that they were able to do that was with strong messaging, with promises they made and promises that they kept over the years. Tommy Nguyen is the co-founder of StoragePug, bringing essentially websites and the digital experience into the digital age for self-storage. And now again, does that sound like something that's big and brand heavy? No. But Tommy, he's known for his high energy, a customer first approach, and they built StoragePug into a national powerhouse that's moving up, right? And they have a commitment to fun, fast, and familiar, right? And that means so much to them that it means their customers are taken care of in a way that no one else can. So why does this matter? Well, what you're going to hear is Bill and Tommy share some battle-tested insights on how they became the David in the Goliath story, how they made bold creative choices, business choices, and were able to stay true to their company values while scaling. Some key stuff, right? Brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. Authenticity beats generic marketing. Bold moves pay off. Customer insights can really drive brand growth. So who were you listening to and what are they saying? Sustaining a brand while scaling is intentional and hard, but worth it. And it allows you to think long term. Branding isn't just for consumer companies with massive marketing budgets. It's the foundation of like how a tech service to a startup company connect with customers, build growth, and grow sustainably by trust. Bill and Tommy's stories show us that brand isn't an afterthought. It's a strategic advantage, especially when you're up against bigger, better funded competitors. And a big thank you to Lauren Mullins from Personality Pool for kicking off this conversation. She's got a great question about brand voice and customer service to kick things off in just the right way. So y'all, as you are inundated with noise, let's get into this conversation about brand with Bill Malkes and Tommy Nguyen. Tommy, Bill, it is an honor to have you all with us today on the Big Ideas Welcome podcast. Today's theme is why a strong brand matters when everyone out there is fighting for attention. Now, what you may be thinking is like, well, okay, so Bill is this, he's exited a company, there's tech, there's biotech, there's all these high level, things that you've been doing your whole career. Tommy has existed in the StoragePug in the self-storage industry. These are not exactly like the sexy places when you think about brand, when you think about the Nike swoosh, or you think about Liquid Death, or you think about, Super Bowl commercials. But here is why we are having this conversation, is that to me, brand is not just a logo, a website. Sometimes it's not even like, quote, the product. It's what people say about you when you're not in the room. It's how you treat your customers. It's how you treat your people. It's the commitments you make of how you're going to interact with folks. So it's the stories they tell when you are not there. And in a world where everybody's fighting for attention, your brand can either be essentially your biggest advantage or your biggest liability. In a David versus Goliath situation, you're never going to outspend. So you have to figure out how to throw those rocks correctly, right? So to get started, I'm actually going to an audience listener and an audience member and a friend to the Knoxville Entrepreneur Center and Sync Space up in Johnson City. Lauren Mullins, the founder of Personality Pool. Now, Personality Pool is, I want you guys to look them up, but they're also a very brand-forward company. And she makes a statement focusing on brand voice and being dedicated to great customer service can move the needle in big ways, even in a crowded, slow-moving industry. For her, like recruitment. So when did you first realize that this could be true for your business? That voice, that promise, that commitment could be something that really moved the needle. Tommy, I'll actually start with you, man.
Chris, thanks for having me. And
absolutely.
Bill's an honor to sit next to you at the same table and trade some fun stories. No, I mean, I think like brand, you mentioned, right? Brand is what people talk about when you're not in the room, right? And I think a lot of new businesses and maybe even old businesses think brand is about them. And really brand is about everyone that's not you. And brand is how, not less so about how you feel and how you think. Maybe it's an expression of how you feel and how you think. But the way we think about brand at StoragePug is brand is how other people feel. Mm-hmm. And what emotions are you eliciting from them, right? In a funny way, like we teach our own clients that. A lot of our operators are investors or self-storage operators, and they don't think about brand in this way. And maybe they didn't have to for the last 50 years. But really, brand is like, what do your customers think about you? What do they feel when you interact with them, like you're saying, right? And so for us, when we entered this industry, that was one of the biggest green flags to me was this industry doesn't care about service. They don't care about love. They don't care about support. They don't care about fantastic first impressions. And fortunately, with my founding team, Matt and Richard, the three of us, that was something that is like in our DNA. And so, for us, it was just we were born, whether we were born or nurtured with it, we started StoragePug with that mentality. And so it was day one, it was a huge green flag advantage. It's like, okay, everyone in this industry does not do this already. They don't love this. They don't support it. They don't see it as a competitive advantage. So from day one, I'm just going to outlove my customer better than you can outlove your customer. And for us, that was like, I don't know if we sat around a table and talked about it. I don't think that happened in a boardroom, but that was something that we innate, again, whether it was nature or nurture, that was something we came to the table with. And then over the years, that became the foundation of who StoragePug is.
Wow.
Yeah, all that love and support, fun, fast, familiar. It became the foundation, but I don't know that was something we agreed on day one. It's just so, I think in a big way, we lucked into that. Just because of who we were.
I'd say you authenticated into that. And I think that's a problem with brands a lot.
I love that.
Right? I mean, they sit down in a room and it's in a laboratory. What are we going to be? No. What are you, man? I had to laugh, Chris, in your intro. You were talking about giants. There's actually two songs that were always popping up around GRIDSMART. One in completely different genres. Bringing Down the Giant by Saving Abel, which I'd always think of I'd always think of the competitors, and The Outsiders by Eric Church.
Yeah.
And I had this moment, right, this epiphany moment, and you talk about being in your DNA. I got named to the national board we had, and first thing I noticed, none of the CEOs ever went out on a trade show floor, never had been to see a customer. They wore really nice suits. But I walk in this board meeting, it's state DOT officials, it's government agencies, it's people in the industry. I walk in a little bit late. I've flown into Washington, and I got a jacket on, but I'm wearing jeans and shirt similar to this. Everybody else, the radical ones, were the ones who were wearing suits without a tie, and there was literally a gasp when I came in. I was like, what the hell's wrong with that guy? And right, so I don't think we started either, but it started coming out, and we use terms like blue tech, right? We were high tech, but we were blue collar. Worked a lot with Chris actually on that. Who we are, where we come from, right? We, in our industry, everybody sold to the engineers. They were the decision makers, which if you go to any MBA school, but the influencers were the guys in the field. We uniquely marketed to the guys in the field.
I love that.
It played with the blue tech, and that was the moments, right, when you started realizing who you're resonating with, who you're making the connection with, and like you said, how people see you. one of the greatest compliments I ever got was one of the CEOs of the other company was introducing me to his VP of marketing. He goes, and this is Bill. He just won't die. I was like, yeah.
Hell yeah.
Well, I love, okay, so Tommy, sort of a combo where you guys sort of made that big discovery around, I love how you say it, is the brand, remember, is not about you. It's about, Bill, to your point, it's not just about, in brand language, there's your sort of primary customer. We'll get academic for a second, and your secondary customer, which means there's the person that writes the checks, but then there's the person that asks them to write the checks. And they may have very different incentives to make decisions one way or the other. So, Tommy, you said, you kind of threw it out, fun, fast, familiar. But I'm going to throw it back to Bill.
That, by the way.
Well, we're going to dig into that because what you see a lot of times when you think, sometimes brand, it's mission, vision, values, and you see them on a company wall, and you sort of see these nearly interchangeable values. We value our people, and you're like, okay.
Projectile vomit.
Right? No, or whatever. You could say many things. We're like a family here, or we're very technologically blah, blah, blah. And so you could, essentially fill in the blank for any company you would want. But when you really have those values, fun, fast, familiar, in place to guide decisions, it becomes that first pin that makes all the other decisions make sense. So Tommy, I want to dig into that, but first I actually want to talk to Bill about traffic control freaks. Tell us a little bit about that and both the impact it had and the fight that you sort of had to take to make it happen.
So as we were sitting down, that became, so our version, by the way, was simple, flexible, transparent. So that's where we came through, and we always tried to embrace, right, simple and flexible, fight with each other all the time. So you live in the tension. But we're coming around, traffic control freaks. We got the idea list. We got like 15 of them, and we're different. Let's play the double entendre. Everybody else is, committed to the best customer service in the world. Green above all else, whatever green means. We always used to say we did everything as hard as possible to make our customers' jobs easier. So we played the double entendre. A lot in the beginning, a lot of people kind of rolled their eyes a little bit. Particularly our board of directors, outside investors weren't thrilled about it, but at that point they weren't thrilled with a lot of things, so it was okay. We just kind of rolled with it. And I think the moment I knew that it resonated, besides the fact that most of our customers got it immediately, I was sitting in a meeting in the United Kingdom with this icon from the industry of marketing, and she asked me 5 times because she did not like it. And as I think about it, I'll have to edit the story a little bit, but finally she said, what are you trying to say to your competitors with that? Never, right? Does anybody ask you what your brand means to your competitors? Well, I said, well, I'm from Detroit, and the poet laureate of Detroit's a guy named Kid Rock, and I'll say what Kid Rock would say. So we'll leave that story at that. But she was offended, and I knew we struck it. So traffic control freaks, and I think they used that all the way up until the PE guys took over the business a couple years after we sold it.
Yeah. Well, so you can see where that developed from the initial internal to the external. And isn't it funny that sometimes when you're really trying to do something different, it's not a validation of someone saying, here's a Werther's candy. It's more like, oh, you're not supposed to get it.
Exactly right.
Right?
If you're trying to be the antithesis of what everybody else is, the whole idea that whatever you say strikes a nerve means you're doing something different, right? And I'm sure you guys do a lot of things different. And that put a lot of people in their uncomfortable zone, right?
Yeah, it puts people on their heels, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, that's weird. That's interesting, right? Yeah. And it draws in the right people.
Yeah, it draws in the right people. Yes.
We did this because we want to talk to the people that we would enjoy talking to, right? I'm fun, fast, familiar, so I want to be around people who are fun, fast, familiar. And it's like you kind of, because we have an opinion, we have an honest take, it allows us to draw in other people who believe the same thing we believe in. Not only on the people that we work with and help build the product and the company, but our own clients who pay us money, right? We have a thing, and maybe you can cut this out, is like we have a no assholes policy.
right?
And that's a part of our brand.
Oh, we're keeping this.
You know, and that, again, that applies to people that we hire and bring in and attract, but also clients. Our sales team is kind of like the gatekeeper of the no assholes policy. They know that they might get a commission check for this client, but if they're not the right client, they know to say, hey, we're not a good fit. And that's really awesome to have people who believe in that, who will sacrifice their commission check knowing that they can get a much better commission check later for the right person. And I think that's so beautiful, you know, and I think, like, yeah, if you have a stake, right, simplicity, transparency, flexibility, that allowed you to attract the right employees and the right kind of customers, much in the way I think Fun, Fast, Familiar does. Yeah. And that's just so, chef's kiss, it's so beautiful.
Table's big enough, anybody's welcome, but if you don't want to sit here, no worries.
Hey, no problem.
Yeah. Hey, we were talking about branding, and you've learned a lot from Bill and Tommy about brand, and so it makes me think about the programming that KEC offers, things like Brand Camp. It's program intensives that we offer a few times a year. Who are you? Why are you doing what you're doing? Who are you doing it for? And how are you communicating? And then Kelsey Walker, our Director of Communications, we have other programming for those who are just getting started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if you have an idea for a business, we have programming for you. We have Starting a Business 101, which is essentially just working with other entrepreneurs in a 5-week-long cohort where you're getting educational skills, you're able to kind of work on problem solving together and really just get a better idea of how to start your business.
In addition to that, a lot of very program specific. If it's e-commerce, if it's capital, like our Inflection Point, if it is operations, if it's, you know, in the summer, our Works Business Accelerator. Y'all check out noxec.com and themakercity.org to learn more. Anything else, guys?
I think that about wraps it up, Chris.
There we go. Again, coming from the background of building brands, thinking about them, people forget, I think sometimes, that the point of, say, a pitch, a website, anything that you would think like, oh, that's where I've experienced, you know, that. The point of that is not to be beautiful. The point of that pitch is not to be the best pitch that's ever done. The point of that, so all of that stuff, the point of it is, what do you want them to do next? Right? And so sometimes that's, do you want them to contact you? Do you want us to follow? Can we show you the thing? Can you sign this and then give us money? You know, like, but what I have also found working with companies from all across the spectrum is that, you know, that differentiation right from off the bat allows you to skip to the better part of the story. Right? Yeah. You don't have to explain, Tommy, to your point, you don't have to explain to someone like, why do we matter? Like, you're not telling them like, oh, these are the thing, or like, I don't know if we'll like these guys or not. Like, that's table stakes. Doing all that, and then you get to come in with a great consumer-focused product, right? That's the rock that you get to come in and then you get to pivot on that. I think that is so much fun. I'd love, you know, Bill, you were at one point, you guys were in 22 countries. Mm-hmm. And so you were, you know, along with your staff, obviously, you know, going around, you know, quite a bit. When did you feel that sort of tide change from, oh, what are these guys doing, to, wait a second, what are these guys doing?
Well, you mentioned colors. So in the industry, right, you open the box, you throw it away. It's infrastructure. We packed everything like it was an iPhone. We had these obnoxious looking boxes. It was obnoxious yellow and asphalt black. And the first thing our distributors said when they saw it was, the $7 you spent on color, we'd rather have that extra $7 in our pocket. That was the first reaction. So what I knew was when I walked in and everybody wanted to show me how much inventory. We bought this much inventory. And you can see, because everybody else has got a bunch of brown, generic looking boxes, and you guys, boom. So that was it, right? When it went from becoming something that our partners were unsure of and uncomfortable with to something they were bragging on.
I love that. Yeah, I don't envy your having to deal with partners and people who aren't talking to customers but have a say in how we run this business. You know, I think that's a fortunate part of our story that we've got to avoid.
But you bring in, I would argue that you have informal distribution channels. You know, so our motto was, and it was, we'd prefer a distributor, but if we couldn't find a distributor that met our values, we'd go direct in that territory.
That's really cool.
So we were about 2/3 distribution, 1/3 direct.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I love that you all had the take with all of the foresight and also like the gusto to be like, yeah, you know what? X-nay these people, I'm going to do it myself because this is the best way to do it. And it may have cost you relationships and even money, but that was the right thing. And that's cool. Yeah.
Well, the difference between short-term, like a short-term spark and a long-term gain, right? Long-term relationships with people that you trust, people that you want to work with. So for you, what do you think, Tommy, when did you feel that wave sort of shift? Because you guys were in the trenches for a long time. Talk about all those hours on a concrete trade floor. Talk about all the work that. Yeah. Actually, both of these. This is a great one because I do not want anyone to think about the romanticized version of entrepreneurship. That's like, dude, you just got to drop ship. You don't own 10 houses by the time you're 30 or whatever. And it's like, no, there is no shortcut. No. So how did you remain convinced and committed to being the kind of company and brand that you were building when your feet are tired, when you're short on cash, when you're short on time, when maybe you're short on patience, right?
I'll tell you, there really is no shortcut. So some of our, and I can only imagine, I'm excited to trade those stories maybe after the pod, but, we've had some long trips, right? Like we would rent, in the early days, we couldn't afford to fly. Mm-hmm. Straight up, right? Like we couldn't afford to fly. And when we did, we flew Spirit.
Yeah.
So you're still not flying.
We're really not flying.
Corporate jet.
Yes. And so we would rent a minivan, put 8 of us in a minivan with all of our trade show gear and drive from Knoxville to Nashville to Memphis to Little Rock, Arkansas to Branson, Missouri, all the way back to Nashville and then home to Knoxville, right? So like the longest road trip was like a 3-week road trip, and my wife is at home by herself, right? And this is the early days where I have 2 beautiful children now. I don't think it's possible. I would not do that today, right? So like to talk about the non-romanticized version of entrepreneurship, it's renting a Dodge minivan with discounts from Enterprise and going on a 3-week road trip, right? And I think like that's it. But I think like when these tides, right? I love your boxes. It was when people start, grown men would pull up their pants and show me their socks. That was one of the first clues. It was like, okay, we're doing something that no one has done in this industry, was give people socks. Colorful, bright purple, orange, blue socks.
And as a demographic, probably that's the only colored socks these guys got, right?
Yes. Well, there's a lot of, no offense to gray hair, but there's
oh, hell yeah.
There's a lot of gray hair. And what's cool is like,
at least you've noticed the hair.
Yes. In the decade that I've been in this industry, what's really cool is there's a youth movement. There's also a diversification movement. So some of the top operators in this industry are women and people of color, which is like, you don't think of that when you think of self-storage historically. It's a lot of gray white men, and that's okay. Yeah. Love those people. But I think it's, and to your point, they're not the kind of people who pick up this purple sock and like, you know what, I'm gonna put this on, and then they're really not the kind of person who's like, I'm gonna show Tommy next time I see him, right? And so like those are the clues that are like, okay, we're doing something really fun. We're still eating beans and rice, don't get me wrong, we're still eating a lot of bananas, but we're like, okay, I think we haven't disrupted anything yet, but I think we're making waves. Yeah. And I thought those are some of the early signs that, okay, we got to keep up this fun energy. And this was before Fun, Fast, Familiar was authenticated, to your point. And I love that, right? We were doing that. We were being Fun, Fast, Familiar before we coined the terms Fun, Fast, Familiar. And so one of the first clues was having one of my, his name is Hugh. He pulled up his pants. And his pant legs, and was like, "Yo, Tom, you won't believe what I'm wearing." And it was really cool. It was this was like 2018, and we had been in business for about a year. We're hustling, we're hungry, we're tired. To your point, and here's a grown ass man showing me his socks. It's like, yo, this is cool. We want more of this. That was one of the first clues.
So you broke the flank and then you labeled it. Is that right?
That's
yeah.
what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Finger on the other side.
I love that. I'm going to remember that. Yeah, we authenticated it. Like that was, it was already who we were. We just coined the terms. And I think that's really cool.
So your road trip, my wife and I were setting up on our 35th wedding anniversary right about the time of our Christmas party. And I wanted to thank her publicly. Started doing the math, doing some estimating. We realized 35 years of marriage, I'd been sleeping in hotels for 7 years. So then we were trying to figure out, have we really made 30 years yet?
Wow.
Because you got to have that element. So that's brand. You got to have that at home.
Your spouse at
You gotta
home,
have that
man.
support.
Yeah, that anchor at home is yeah. Sophie, thank you. I love you. And you know, and like I said, now with children, it's
Now you got me under pressure. I love you, Lynn. More than he does. I'm older.
I love it.
I'm just kidding. Robin, you're the best. Listen, we're not leaving anybody out.
Michelle.
Michelle, yeah, Anthony, our producer.
Our producer.
Michelle, you're the best.
We love you too, Michelle.
You know, it's interesting
And
to.
Robin, I like you better than Chris. So.
Well, that's absolutely. It is really kind of interesting to think about the people that that come along with you for that journey,
Gosh.
and how much. Sacrifice is one of the words that you could put, but that makes you kind of sound all. It's too braggy. It's almost like this is what you got to do.
There's no other choice. You don't know that this is hard.
You don't know until like week 2 of that 3-week trip, and you're like, "What am I doing?" And that's when a lot of people give up.
Oh, sure.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
That breakthrough, right?
A lot of people give up before they take the minivan for 3 weeks, right? So
There you go. Fist bumps.
Yes.
So you guys, obviously, you're coming at these companies, you're approaching them with strong personalities that have, like, you can kind of tell where you stand, you know, and maybe that is also something that you've developed, you know, over your life, obviously, personally, but professionally. How important is that sort of personal brand? From the stamp and literal personality that you bring to a company, as well as how you show up for that company. How important has that been to you, and how have you maintained that sense of personality as the companies grew, right?
You know, I think it's an advantage that some companies have, but companies don't always need it. Right, so if you are an up and coming, or maybe you've been doing this for 10 years and you feel like, man, I don't feel like I am that kind of personality, that dynamic, that whatever, right? Just know that you don't necessarily need that. There are many very successful companies who build products that we use, and you don't know who the CEO is. You don't know who the founders are, and that's okay. That's one way of doing business. But if you do have a little sauce in you, really lean into it. And I think that for me, that was advice I got from a dear friend and someone who we still work with, Tyler Anthony, incredible human. And that was something he shared with me. It was like, I think, Tommy, you have the sauce. Whatever sauce is, like, lean into it. Don't be shy about it.
Yeah.
If you have the personality, like, make it 10 times bigger. Mm-hmm. Be hokey. Be cheesy, if that's you, if that is your personality, right? And actually really lean into it. And like, I got that advice maybe 7 years ago, and I was like, okay, when we built StoragePug, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna really lean into it. If that's who I am, and it's natural, it comes natural, and I don't have to work hard and think about it, and people gravitate towards it. Let me just like sink my teeth into it. Let me see how far it takes me. Now, eventually, I think that personality has to grow and it has to change and it has to evolve. And you can't let little things jade you. You can't let little things change the core of who you are. As I mentioned DNA earlier, right? You can't let those things strip away who you are as a person, but you can add to it. Yeah. And you can add people to it. And I think like that is just truly, and my partners will say the same if they're sitting in this room, is like, I think that's been a big part of StoragePug's story. But we're entering a different phase of the company where it's like, that was good rocket fuel to get here. Now we got to get past the orbit. We got to get to the next stop. And I think like that's where my hope is that my personality no longer has to be the fuel. I hope that I've attracted people so we can use and leverage their abilities and have them help build this rocket and propel it. And that's the, like, you know, you've passed this point. in your, like with GRIDSMART and the other projects you've worked on, but we're entering this really cool phase, and these are muscles I don't have yet, and it's really fun.
But you're still the foundation, right? I mean, that's it, right? It's growing from, the vines are growing off that, and bringing in that kind of team. And I'm really glad you asked that question, Chris, because one of the things I see with branding all the time is this tension you got to hold internally and externally.
Okay.
So, you see a company does this splendid marketing campaign that they love people, and it's a PE firm, and they treat the people internally like horse shit, right?
Yeah.
And then you're not authentic. You bring it through everything. And I think that's one of the things we successfully did, and it sure sounds like it's exactly the same thing. Everybody believed, and there was room for everybody.
The K-Brew roasts continue. Pierce, what do you got for us?
The thing I'd like to roast today is this idea that I need to add more product lines, especially when I'm first getting going. Your sales, your revenue might drop off a little bit after that initial push, and you get panicky and you want to add product lines. Don't do it. I hate this method. Instead, market harder, trust your brand, trust your focus, and keep going. That's really the only way to build a brand that's going to dominate in your market.
Where do the people go to get a little special offer for our Big Ideas Welcome audience?
Download the K-Brew app, K-Brew Coffee and Bagels, and you will get a free coffee or tea on your first visit or your next visit if you already go to K-Brew.
Well, I think what that is, Tommy, what you were talking about is making room and not just allowing, but understanding that people are going to come to this table. And you touched on something interesting that, leadership in a lot of these big kind of old cold industries is changing over. It's going to look different. It's going to sound different. They're going to care about different things than they have in the past. And if we continue to hold on to what worked 10 years ago, this is how it's always been done. Not only is that, for one, that's not interesting to me, but also what a terrible business decision, right? When here's this town, this city, we're not going to listen to you, right? And then you become that Goliath. You become that sort of this is what I say goes. And particularly now with technology as it's evolving, I think those Goliaths are going to start getting challenged more and more often because the barrier to entry is lower. Yeah. Right?
I think one of our greatest fears at StoragePug is we become the incumbent we replaced. Oh. And it's how do we not be that slow ship that can't turn? Right? Because that fast is a core part of our DNA. And how do we continue to develop software fast? How do we continue to respond to emails fast and do that in a way that is scalable, that allows people to have, some of the things we've done is 7-hour workdays. Why not? Why can't we give everyone an hour back? Let's try it. And we did that flippantly, and it worked. And so we kept it. And it's awesome. But how do we maintain that as we grow from where we are to where we will be and not become just like everyone else eventually gets to,
Don't you think, though, you were talking earlier, right? You're the foundation. You're letting these branches grow. The branches are going to grow in different directions. They're going to follow the light. So don't you believe that's the first part of, that's the first step in what you're doing, right? Yeah. That's how you don't end up being that tree that's like you're in Minnesota and it's just tall and just branches, right?
So we've sort of gone full circle all the way from where it started, internally, both for you guys personally and professionally. We've sort of gone through the adventures of growing the companies. Bill, for you, exiting and having multiple lives around the world, multiple companies, and staying true to your values throughout that process. You also said, Tommy, I kind of thought a lot of what you thought about those different people that you come along with, and that's the self-awareness to understand, oh, wait a second, this is where I need to hand this, this is where someone else with a different skill set, with a different mind, that can take these values, that can take this brand and grow it into something you may not even have on your bingo card right now. And how exciting is it to build a brand, and back to the brand being the thing that people say about you when you're out of the room? How important, how powerful is that to build a foundation that someone can come from a different place with a different skill set, with a different point of view, all that, but you can come to that table and say, we both really care about this and can work together. right? I just think that's so fun and interesting, and it makes this particular journey, if it's entrepreneurship, that is hard. One of the things that has been one of the most enjoyable parts of it for me is that you get in the trenches and you understand people, how they work, what they need, what helps build people up rather than tear them down, both internally and externally for your customers. So we'll sort of tie a bow on everything with all of the experience that you guys bring to the table. And there's a founder listening out there today, or maybe someone who's in the middle where you are, right, Tommy? Or they've exited, or they're just getting started, or they're just thinking about it, and everything seems completely overwhelming. So when we talk about brand or this, like something that always seems to seem extra, in the way that it's traditionally thought about. But for those of us out there that are overwhelmed by so many options, too many options, right? In so many ways, what's a practical thing someone could do right now? Like as soon as you get done with this podcast, like pull over and but what's something that someone could actually do and think about from a brand perspective, from a mission, from a vision perspective? What's something that someone could do that could help bring clarity to what they're building?
I think I'm going to borrow from you, right? Because great ideas come from riffing and iterating off it. But Tommy said earlier, it's right what they say about you when you're not in the room. Mm-hmm. What are they going to say about you when you're gone? How was that? How was your tenure remembered? Because then you have a bit of an end in mind, right? And we wanted to be fair, we wanted to be honest, we wanted to be approachable, and we want to be the guys that always simplify things, right? Life's hard, so again, and I think I've had this discussion. I have the privilege of being able to mentor, and people get caught up. There's so many freaking voices telling people, you got to do this, you got to change your colors. That's the wrong RGB. Or hex code, and right, it's only wrong if it's not for you. You said something earlier, and I always try to talk to this when I met her. This is the way I did it. There's inherent faults in my personality, and I'm a broken human being. But so you don't have to do it the same way. But there's a way about thinking about it. So that's what I would say: is think to the end, and how do you want to be remembered? And that's a good way.
Yeah,
I really love that.
I'll tag on it, man. One time when we thought we were going to die, and there was many of those, because we got.
Also, you will think you're going to die many a time.
I had everybody in senior management write their career obituary.
Wow.
I did it first. So his career started here, and it died right here at GRIDSMART because he couldn't raise enough money to make payroll. And that was.
Wow.
But
what an exercise!
I stole it from a military general who made the people in his charge do it, because he said once you accepted that you were going to die, you weren't afraid to die, and we quit walking around worrying about the company going to die because we all wrote our obituary.
Let's go do that.
So
wow. I'll tell one death story, almost death story, because we're still alive.
Company, right? Company.
Yeah, company. Yes. 6 months into starting StoragePug, we the partners the three of us had put enough money to survive for 6 months. We had a 6-month runway. Month 5 rolls around, we had 0 customers. What that means for those in the audience is you have no money coming in, and if you're doing the math, we put 6 months of capital. We're at month 5, and funny enough, the Matt, Richard, and I, we actually never talked about it. We just, I don't want to say luck was part of it, timing was part of it, but I don't want to discredit our grit and our smartness, but luck was 97% of this. A friend who I went to high school with, her dad owns storage facilities, and Matt, my partner, knew her. Anyways, Knoxville, thank you, Knoxville. We closed this deal, and that allowed us to extend our runway for 2 more months, and then it continued to continue. So yeah, a lot of little death moments. But I love this question, Christian. I love your take, right? Of how are people going to remember you once you're gone? And I think it's a great place to start. I think for me, how I would answer this question is look in your soul, and what is your key differentiator? And I'll give 3 companies who I think are globally, or maybe not globally, but universally lauded as really great brands. MailChimp, Figma, Stripe. And I love how you talked about you sold to the influencers, not necessarily the check writer. Right. Stripe, how they became the API for payment processing, they built it around developers. Figma became a $20 billion acquisition because they built it for designers. And MailChimp built it for small businesses. And then they became a multi-billion dollar acquisition years and years later for Intuit, right? And I think like that's really special. And think about that. Those were their key differentiators. They built it for developers, designers, small businesses. And so the practical, crunchy thing that you can do right now after this podcast ends is call your customer and say, yo, of all the choices you picked, why did you choose me over the 11 zillion other choices that you have? Call that customer. If they don't give you the crunchy words, call the next customer, right? That's how you discover and identify your key differentiator if you don't already know that. And what's cool is once you've discovered it, now megaphone it to everyone else. Because then you can attract the people who value that key differentiator. And I imagine there's many of those people out there. So the crunchy thing is call your customer and ask them, hey, all those years ago or all those weeks ago.
Remember when?
Do you remember this? Why did you choose me over the choices that you had in front of you? And it will be so enlightening. In fact, this is something we do to this day at StoragePug is at the closing call where they've already agreed to work with us. We agree that we're good vibes. There's no assholes here. We love each other. We're going to be great partners. We asked them one of the last questions we asked them is, "Hey Chris, why did you choose to sign up today?" And we catalog that in our database. And then 90 days later, after we're now have a partnership, we asked the same question. Hey, 90 days in, how did you feel about this decision? And why did you choose StoragePug? And I want to make sure that why they chose us and why they stayed with us are the same.
Yeah, nice.
And make sure there's alignment there between sales and operations. But that'd be my crunchy advice. Call your customer, ask them, why did you pick me?
Imagine that, talking to customers.
Imagine that. Well, Bill, Tommy, I appreciate, and so does our audience, y'all's approach. And again, when we, like you said, it's what people say when you're outside of the room. Tommy, you were just able to tell us exactly why you care about companies, MailChimp, Figma, Stripe. Some of these companies you maybe you've heard of them, maybe you haven't. But there's probably those companies or those people where you could say, like, this is exactly why this matters to me. And that is so, like, to me, that is just the key. That is so much the key to becoming that David and the Goliath scenario. And then, Bill, that it's like, what happens at the end? Right? So what you're thinking about, Tommy, is, okay, right now, what happens now? Why do you care? Why do you care? Why do you care? Why do you care? And then Bill also being able to put it on an even larger vision of like, wait a second, if we go through all this trouble, all this toil, all this heartache, for what? For what? And, I think too often business can all the time be, so essentially sort of reduced to a balance sheet. Now, obviously, you want that balance sheet to look a certain way. I'm looking over here at Bill, who has been a CFO his whole life. He's like, I don't know, I like those numbers. But what contributes positively to that balance sheet is relationships, the short and long term. Do people trust what you tell them? And then when you say you're going to do something, 90 days later, 100 days later, 2 years later, do you do it? So that, my friends, this is a good episode, y'all. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you enjoy the podcast and everything that we share. Again, as always, I am Chris McAdoo. I wash dishes at a little outfit called the Knoxville Entrepreneur Center, located downtown in the heart of Knoxville, Tennessee, otherwise known as the Maker City. I don't know, y'all. I think it's time to get to work.